Ah,
Siya sasabihin sa
correct.
Benny.
Good
Go ahead.
evening, Mayor. Good evening, Executive Secretary Salvador Medialdea, Senator Bongo, and to all the honorable secretaries and to my fellow government servant. Well, I was tasked to report the DNR response by our Secretary Roy A. Simatu on the onslaught of Typhoon Odette. Well, first, on the clearing of roads and our initiative to help the people, no, na magkaroon na po sila ng mga kahoy, namigay na po ng mga chainsaws na ipahiram na po sa mga local government units sa Central Visayas, wherein Bohol po nabigyan, ang Cebu, Negros Oriental, at Palawan naman po ang Puerto, Princesa at ang Taytay po ay nabigyan na rin po. At sa Surigao at Siargao po and sa Dinagat Island po ay nabigyan na rin po ng mga chainsaw para po magamit nila. At the same time sa Caraga po ay nakapagbigay na po tayo ng 90,000 board feet of wood para ho magamit nila. 45,000 ay naibigay po sa Dinagat Island. Sa Surigao City naman po ay 25,000 and sa Siargao naman po ay 20,000 board feet. Now on the report naman po, when it comes to dito po sa Surigao ay nakapagbigay po ng 2 tons na relief goods po ang DNR sa tulong po ng ating Philippine Air Force na po. And on the report of the on the Siargao inspection and operation dated December 20 and 24, December 2021, the local government of Siargao headed by Governor Francisco Tino Matugas and the Department of Environment and Natural Resources agreed that the people residing in the coastal areas will no longer be permitted to return. It is for their safety. No po, sinisiguro po natin na hindi na po muling mangyari ito pong nangyaring pagwasak sa mga bahay nila dahil sa lakas ng bagyong ito. No po? In lieu of this, the DNR will distribute parcel of land, no po, as per the instruction also of our President Rodrigo Roa Duterte, to qualified tenured migrants under the Protected Area Community-Based Resource Management Agreement. Ito po doon po ginagamit sa mga protected areas, no? Base po sa para ho sa kaalaman ng lahat, ang Siargao po kasi ay na-deklara pong protected area to. Kung dito po ngayon magagamit ito pong tinatawag nating PAC-BARMA, no po, which has a term of 25 years and renewable for another 25 years, no po. Kung kaya't sa kasalukuyan ay ito po yung pinakamagandang naging pamasko po natin dahil December 24 po na i-deliver ang message na ito sa ating pong mga kababayan dyan po sa Siargao. No po? We encourage the local government unit concerned to form people's organizations in different municipalities to fast-track the facilitation of PAC-BARMA. Concerned mayors were advised to identify temporary resettlement areas until such time that PAC-BARMA will be awarded. Ang ating pong Caraga Regional Office was also instructed to mobilize nurseries in the region for the tree planting activities in Siargao. Dahil based on the inspection po, almost 80% po ng mga puno natin na napakagaganda po along the roadside, lahat po talaga nasira at nagtumbahan po. We also activated people's initiatives for the coastal cleanup to remove the debris, no, that were stuck in the shoreline. Again, sakali pong magkaroon ng malakas na alon o malakas na ulan na naman, maaari pong malagay sa alanganin ang ating pong mga kababayan dyan. And 2 chopper load and 2 plane load of relief goods were delivered composed of tents, water, rice, canned goods, and instant noodles. Since very busy po ang lahat po ng mga vessels natin, aeroplano, the DNR were forced to charter planes. And of course, with the help of Governor Ryan Singson also, kung kaya't may nagamit din po tayong aeroplano. around 100 stranded passengers in Siargao Airport were extracted using our chartered flights back to Manila and some in Butuan. More or less 200 stranded passengers were left for the next flight, were also fed by the DENR team. Well, these orders are delivered on December 24, 2021, before the Christmas Eve, based on the instruction of our Honorable Secretary Roy A. Simatu to assure the people of Siargao that victims of the onslaught of the typhoon Odette also deserves a happy Christmas. That's all po, and our operation continues. We will be heading to Bohol naman po para magdala pa rin po ng aming pong mga relief goods po at makatulong sa ating makababayan doon. Maraming salamat po, Mayor.
May tanong na ako sa iyo. Tanong biro lang. Saan si Roy?
Well, nasa travel po siya sa Iloilo dahil tinitingnan niya rin po yung situation po doon naman sa Iloilo.
Okay. Believe ako. Baka ang landing niya Boracay, ha? Sabi ko, biro lang. I know he's really very busy. And he's a hard worker. Gusto ko lang maitanong, yung lipatan ng mga tao na space in that near where they are now staying, yung relocation sa gobyerno.
Ay, malapit lang po.
Lupa ng gobyerno?
Opo, ito po yung mga protected areas po na pwede naman hong gamitan ng tenurial instrument.
Oh, good. Mas mabuti yan. Marami mo namang lupa ang gobyerno. Bigay na lang ninyo sa mga tao. Within the next few months. Pasa mo na lang sa sino bang sa DAR. Sa DAR para they can come in and said plan for these people in areas. Ang aking advice is kung mag-rehabilitate kayo ng isang community and you would want to look for the space, if it's a government land, ibigay na ninyo lahat. Wala nang those idle government land, idle lang of the government, not productive. Better give it to the people right away. Nandito lang siya na sino bang pumalit kay sa DAR. Babae?
Lalaki.
Mm-hmm.
Dating undersecretary.
Idagdag na lang niya yan doon sa land reform My sense is that yung lahat ng lupa na pwedeng ibigay sa mga tao, whether they were victims of the typhoon or not, ibigay na lang yung sa kaya nilang ibigay. Kaya nating ibigay lahat. Wala naman tayong maraming tao talaga. And, if you want to improve the place, you have to deal with the people. And most of them are marginalized or are really very poor na walang malipatan. So, kailangan, bilisan ninyo ng konti. Pero si Casillones made a good, for the time that he was with the cabinet, he made a significant act of giving so many lands. I think malaki ang naibigay natin sa gobyerno. Tignan ko, I just to sir, you want to go ahead.
Maraming salamat, Mr. President. At, I have a few slides to show. William Dar, please. Mr. President, Senator Bongo, ES Bong Medialdia, fellow members of the Cabinet, gusto kong ibahagi po yung aming ginagawa sa Department of Agriculture, of course, always in partnership with various departments of government, including that of the private sector. As of today, Mr. President, ang total damage and losses sa agriculture natin sa bansa ay umabot na po ng almost 6 billion pesos, still counting. And this has affected almost 62,000 farmers and fishers, and the total area affected is more than 70,000 hectares. And if you translate this into volume of loss in terms of food metric tons, that's already almost 105,000 metric tons. Now, looking at the losses by commodity, the fisheries sector has been hit hardest, followed by rice, and the third one is coconut, and of course the others that would include infrastructure, corn, livestock, high-value crops, and other machineries, 13.7%. And again, if you look at the total production loss of rice this year to date, we have lost almost 700,000 metric tons. This is 3.4% of the 20.3 million metric tons target this year. Next slide, please.
Sir, page 3 po, walang laman yung sa slide niyo, sir. Walang number.
Okay, next. Okay, these are the available interventions. Mr. President, we are lining up a 1 billion quick response fund for the rehabilitation of affected areas chargeable to the 2022 budget, which is already almost a week from now. And second, we have ongoing now distribution of the indemnification to affected farmers. Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation is having this 828 million pesos to pay almost more than 12,000 farmers for that matter. I mean, 12,000 pesos average per farmer. So if you have we can pay almost 69,000 farmers for areas, in those areas affected by Typhoon Odette. The other intervention is we have from the Agricultural Credit Policy Council set aside 500 million pesos as a survival and recovery assistance program, and this will be good for 20,000 farmers and fisherfolk, and each given a loan of 25,000 pesos. The other interventions, next slide please. We have this prepositioned rice seeds, 314 million worth, 129 million worth of corn seeds, 57 million worth of assorted vegetables from the 2021, and we can add more from the 2022 budget. These are already ready for distribution to those affected farmers. The Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources has already extended assistance to affected fisherfolk at the amount of 47 million pesos and continue to procure more materials for the construction of boats, for that matter, fishing boats. And On the intervention coming from the Philippine Coconut Authority, of course, as I mentioned, coconut is one of the most devastated commodities, about 25.7%. They have deployed chainsaws also in southern Leyte, 50, in Siargao, 30, and 50 additionally will come for Caraga region. So, next slide. These are the available seats reserved, Mr. President. For rice, 73,958 bags, 24,032 bags for corn, and 5,632 kilograms for assorted vegetables. And this is for the various regions affected by Typhoon Odette. Next slide will give us the details where the Crop Insurance Corporation will be distributing the indemnification. So here it is shown by region, Region 4B, 6, 7, 8, 10, and Caraga. So the giving of this indemnification, Mr. President, starting already. Next slide, please. Now, these are the activities we have done prior to the coming of the Typhoon Odette with the early warning given by the UST Picard, and also the activities that we did during and after. So as number one, we advise farmers and fisher folk to harvest matured produce. And along this area, we have saved about 655 million pesos. Number two is the prepositioning of seeds for rice, corn, high-value crops, drugs, and biologics for livestock and poultry. Then we, after the typhoon, we did conduct rapid damage and needs assessment, both ground and aerial documentation. We continue also to monitor food supply situation from, in those affected areas, and mobilizing food supplies like rice from areas that are surplus. And so far so good, Mr. President. We do not have a big problem in terms of rice. Rice is so much available in most of the areas, but of course there are those areas that have been just slightly affected because of logistics concern. Next slide. Yes, debris management and provision of planting materials have been started. We also mobilize the Kadiwa on wheels. We now have the facilitation of this insurance or indemnification, including that of loan programs, and the provision of and repair as well of fishing boats. We continue to manufacture through our procurement agents fishing boats that will be distributed to the affected areas, Mr. President. Next slide. This is what I was saying, that as a result of the early advisory of the department, we have saved almost 655 million worth of rice and corn. Now, before closing, Mr. President, we would like to assure the public that mayroon tayo pong sapat na pagkain. Of course, we just need to mobilize them from one area to the areas where they are needed most. And we hope that we would like also to mention that on top of what is now mentioned here, we are still having about 3 billion pesos that will be distributed this next 5 weeks for this rice farmers financial assistance. So, nandyan lahat po ang tulong ng national government, and we are in partnership with local government units to see to it that the farmers and the fishers are properly attended to and supported, Mr. President. Marami pong salamat.
Maraming salamat, Secretary Da. Well, you go ahead.
Yes, Mr. President, I have a short presentation as well. Mr. President, and to the members of the Cabinet, good evening.
You just go ahead. They can hear you.
I'll explain first, Mr. President, the effect of the typhoon. Immediately after the typhoon passed, the telecommunications were badly hit, primarily because the typhoon also affected the fiber transmission lines of the towers. Not many towers went down, but the primary problem of the typhoon path, dito po lalo na sa may Surigao, sir, ang tinamaan po dito are the fibers that connect the towers from each other. And when those fibers were uprooted and also torn, nadali po immediately yung telecommunications, not just of Surigao, sir. Immediately after the typhoon hit this place, most of Mindanao even went dark in terms of telecoms, because the connection of our internet and telecoms flow from this path po. So kung napansin nyo po, around December 17, 18, wala pa rin po kayong masyadong interrupted pa rin dito sa may Davao even, and most of Mindanao. And then, sir, dito sa Bohol and Cebu and the Negros Islands, the effect po yan, because although some of the towers have generator sets for 2-3 days, naubos po agad, sir. The lack of power from Bohol and Negros affected the sustainability of the telecommunications as well. So, and the same is true for Palawan, sir. So, dual, sir, no? Yung towers, kahit hindi sila naputol ay natumba, ang problema ay the power lines that sustain the telecommunications went down. Next slide, please. Immediately after po, we created Task Force Odette. We asked Yusek Alan Silor, our Head of Emergency Communications, to head the team. And we also asked our directors from various regions to plan the logistics and transport. I'm so thankful for Secretary Lorenzana. He volunteered to deploy our flyaway VSATs and gensets to Surigao and Siargao. Next slide, please. We also, I'd like to explain, sir, the total loss of communication to all the places was so disruptive that we had to create a two-pronged approach of the restoration, of the augmentation. Sir, a lot of people are asking, is it our job to be able to restore the cellular signal? Sabi ko sa mga Globe, Smart, and dito, they were asking me, how can I help? I said, don't bother with emergency comms. Your job is to restore immediately what you can with your service. Concentrate in restoring your service. So for example, si Smart, nagpapatulong siya mag-transport ng mga tao at kagamitan we helped them rather, the ICT helped them transport their people and equipment to the places. Because, sir, for example, noong December 17, they were lining up like normal people in the ports. So, we asked I called the PPA, sir, to say, paunahin mo yung smart and telco people aboard with all their equipment. So they had to jump the line, sir. So sorry na lang for all the passengers sa sama ng tingin, but we really asked them to prioritize the telco. So our two-pronged approach, Mr. President, is that immediately we have to first provide emergency communications to the local governments, primarily, sir, the governor and their mayors. So, for example, sir, when you asked us to go to Surigao and Siargao on December 19, we went there, sir, and also later, we were brought to by chopper. People were congregating. They were so happy and said, we don't have food. We just have one sat phone. And when we went there, when we arrived there, they were so happy, sir, because at long last, Mayor Elizabeth Matugas will now be able to communicate with her brother, the governor of Surigao. So that's how bad it is, sir. 3 days na po yun. So it's really important that we are able to give sat phones to the mayors. And the same is true pala with Bohol. Governor Artiap was breathing on my neck, asking for sat phones for each of his mayors. Okay, sir. The second approach, sir, is yung connect tawag. Now, it's so difficult, sir, because when we go to a place, they'll see that we have restored the signal through VSAT. People begin to congregate, and it's so heartbreaking because we keep on telling them, this is for the use first of emergency coordination. But people will really congregate and say, can we ask, can we call? So we also have to establish Connect Tawag Center, sir. I'll go through the restoration, the response on a per province. Mabilis lang naman, sir. Can you go to the next slide? So Siargao, sir, that's what I was saying. Yusek Silor instructed Mayor Beth, she's the mayor, sir, and we gave her as one sat phone. And immediately, sir, all of a sudden, that same day, for after 3 days, she was already able to coordinate with Governor Matugas, her brother. This was December 19. And then, sir, the other thing that we needed is to restore communications on the Siargao Airport. When you arrived here on December 23, sir, that was made possible because if without communication, you cannot land the plane because you do not know if the airstrip is clear, sir. So you need to know, somebody's got to say it's okay. Kasi nangyari, sir, people are in the airstrip, sir. And then, sir, malaking tulong din ang mga telco. Di talaga nila maiwasan. So, they have this mobile cell sites then, which they help augment. So, sabi ko, okay na yan because why did Smart do this? It will really take time for them to restore the tower-based telecommunication, sir, because problema yung power at putol pa talaga yung mga certain transmission. Next slide, please. Sa Dinagat, sir, we provided the VSAT for the EOC, sir, for the OCD. And then ganun din, sir, si Governor, sir, parang sobra na siyang tuwa na meron na siyang sat phone because this was December 20, sir. 4 days na rin po, wala pa rin silang pantawag. So they could not contact, sir. And this was in response to your, this was December 19 din, sir. Sunday ng gabi, sir. So, next, sir. Sa Surigao, sir, we now have the Connect Tawag Centers. So, people are now able to go to the Connect Tawag Centers to call. Ito po yung emergency, mayroon po tayong emergency vehicle, sir. Ito po, sir, pinadala po namin to, sir, bago magbagyo. Kaso nga lang, ang dami talagang sinagasaan ng bagyo, sir. So, meron pa tayong pinadala din ganitong mga move, sir, sa Bohol, sa Cebu, and then sa Palawan, sir, we really just had to fly away VSAT, sir. In Visayas. Ayan, sir, oh. So, yung dinudumog na ng tao yung mobile cell site, sir. So, this mobile vehicle, sir, serves as a mobile tawag center, sir. This is in Bohol, Negros Occidental, sir. Ayan, sir. Yan, ganito kalaki yan, sir. Tatlo yan, sir. May malaking, parang malaking truck, may Land Cruiser at saka motor. Lahat po yan, sir, may radio, tapos may Wi-Fi din at VSAT. Tapos si Governor Gwen po, binigyan din na po natin ng, sa kanya po to, binigay po nilagay po namin sa Cebu. This was, late na po to, sir. This was December 22. Magpapasko na, sir. So, ito, sir, she really waited for this to come. Next, sir. Sa Palawan, sir, thank you to the Philippine Coast Guard, sir. Si Philippine Coast Guard po naglipat nito from Batangas. Tinala po to Palawan, sir. So, pero awa ng Diyos, sir, we already have power in Palawan, except for 5 barangays. So, we have to lend the gensat, sir. So, I was telling Sec Kusi that we really need gasoline because hindi naman nagtataas ang presyo, sir, pero kulang ang supply, di ba? So, yung gensats, ang generator, sir, apart from powering the VSAT, magcha-charge pa ng cellphone, nagcha-charge na rin kung ano, sir. The commercial telco, sir, as we said earlier, we asked them to concentrate on restoring their services. Sa Palawan, sir, 95% na silang okay. So malapit na rin naman silang maka-restore. And then 60% sa Visayas, 64% sa Mindanao. Si Smart naman, sir, nag-increase na rin, sir, 76%. Palawan, 78%. So, sir, you might be wondering bakit mababa pa rin. Power po talaga ang kulang. At power yan ang reason. Pero pag meron na yung power, sir, sindi agad yan, sir. And then dito, sir, reach 75% in Mindanao. Yan, matatapos yan sila siguro, sir, before New Year, sir. Thank you po. Last, sir, requested actions, we need fuel. At saka we need the help of the PNP to help protect the Connect Tawag dahil dinudumog po, sir. So, kung walang police, mahirap silang pa-fall in line at saka yung iba nagtetelebabad, sir. So, pag may police po, medyo napipigil, sir. And then, hirit na ako ng number 3, hindi yata nadagdag sa kan. I was asking Sec Art earlier, as soon as possible, as soon as pwede na talaga, sir, we need to also still be prioritized in the transport, sir. We are still to deploy about 100 VSATs and SAT phones in the next few days. And we are simply asking na ma-prioritize ang aming, para siyang ano sir, parang bypass lane ba? So pag nagpakita ng DICT card, pasakayin ka agad sa commercial planes or commercial ports, sir. Thank you po.
I will call Secretary De Rosario, then si Rolly, Secretary Bautista. Then maybe we'll ask the Secretary of Education.
Thank you, Mr. President. Fellow cabinet members, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Sir, I'll be giving an update on the department's response to Typhoon Odette on the extent of damage to residential houses in the affected areas. We have a total of partially damaged 339,327 and totally damaged 167,077 for a total of 506,404. Actually, this is not the final figure because as of yesterday, Mr. President, it was only 478,000. So just for a day of reporting, it increased by 28,000. So it's now 506,404. And from the damaged houses, we can see among the regions where the Typhoon Odette hit the different areas. And basically, it concentrated into 5 regions. Region 4B, Region 6, Region 7, Region 8, and Region 13. Based on our estimate, the total and partially damaged houses may reach to about 600,000, Mr. President. Next slide, please. This is shelter assistance provided by the International Organization for Migration and USAID. It distributed shelter-grade tarpaulin sheets which can accommodate one family of 4 to 6 members with a size of 4 by 6 or 24 square meters. A total of 5,598 shelter-grade tarp sheets were handed over to the LGUs in Cebu, Bohol, Southern Leyte, and Region 13. Pinakamarami, sir, sa Region 13 because of the damage in Dinagat Islands and Siargao. Also, coordination was made with the Philippine Coast Guard for the distribution of the following tarpaulin sheets: 14,000 shelter-grade tarpaulin sheets, 250 modular tents for evacuation centers, and 1,310 solar lamps. And likewise, it has available 1,000 shelter repair kits for distribution, composed of GI sheets, lumber, plywood, tarps, nails, and carpentry tools. Today, 700 kits arrived in Butuan City, and these will be distributed mostly in the Siargao and Dinagat Islands. In Southern Leyte, 300 kits will arrive in Maasin on December 31, 2021. And all this is through the assistance provided by the International Organization for Migration and USAID. Next slide, please. This is the National Housing Authority Shelter Assistance per instruction of the President, wherein we are to provide 5,000 cash assistance to initially to 97,500 families worth 487.5 million pesos in Region 4B, Region 6, Region 7, 8, 10, and 13, composed of 16 provinces, 5 cities, and 1 district, which is Siargao. And the total number of beneficiaries is 97,500 for a total of 487.5 million pesos. The distribution is started today and expected to be completed by Wednesday, Mr. President. And ways forward to complete the 100 million commitment per province by the President. This will be completed by January of 2022, Mr. President. And the procurement of housing materials for targeted island LGUs with on-site delivery of the construction materials will be undertaken from January to March of 2022 because of the procurement process and the delivery of the construction materials, Mr. President. Next slide, please. Now, on the part of the Pag-ibig Fund, the 12 million members of Pag-ibig Fund, especially those living in the identified affected regions, 6 regions, we allocated 5 billion as calamity loan for members in areas affected by Typhoon Odette. And the calamity loan, every member can borrow up to 80% of their total Pag-ibig savings with the lowest interest rate of 5.95 per annum and payable of up to 3 years with a grace period of 2 months. In this scheme, Mr. President, if a Pag-ibig member will borrow 20,000 pesos, they will pay about 600 per month for a period of 3 years. And they start paying on the 3rd month once their application was approved. And they can apply online. If the communication is stored in their respective areas, they can apply online to avail of the calamity loan. And we have allocated 5 billion for that. Next slide, please. So that's all, Mr. President, with regards to our shelter assistance.
Salamat, Secretary De Rosario. I'll give the floor to the Secretary Bautista, DSWD.
Could you show my slide, please? Mayong gabi, Pangulong Mayor Rodrigo Duterte at sa ating lahat. Salamat po sa pagkakataong may ulat ng DSWD ang ginawang pagtugon sa pangailangan ng mga biktima ng Bagyong Odette, katuwang ang ibang sangay ng gobyerno. Ang aking pong iulat ay naglalaman ng mga datos ukol sa mga programa at serbisyo ang ating naiabot sa mga mamayan ng Regions 4B, 6, 7, 8, 10 at Caraga. Bago pa dumating ang Bagyong Odette, nagplano at nagsagawa ang mga DSWD field offices ng mga paghanda at mga preparasyon gaya ng pre-disaster risk assessment analyst, group meeting, pag-activate ng quick response teams, pag-preposition ng family food packs sa mga estratehikong lokasyon, at patuloy na pag-repack ng food packs and non-food items. Ang kabuong bilang ng ating family food packs, next slide please, na nakapreposition bago dumating ang bagyo sa mga affected regions ay nasa humigit kumulang 100,000 family food packs na nagkakahalaga ng 60 milyong piso. Makikita po sa slide ang breakdown per region. Next slide. Sa kalagayan naman po ng mga pamilya at individual na na-displace dahil sa Bagyong Odette, may 7,400 evacuation centers ang binuksan sa mga apektadong rehiyon. Nasa halos 700,000 pamilya ang namamalagi rito o katumbas ng mahigit 2 milyon individual. Samantala, ang mga nasa labas naman ng evacuation centers, next slide. Ang nasa labas naman ng evacuation centers ay halos nasa 260,000 pamilya o katumbas na 960,000 individual. Next slide. Narito ang buod ng mga programa at serbisyong na ihatid natin sa ating mga kababayan. Umabot na sa humigit 175,000 family food packs ang ating naibigay sa mga nasalanta ng bagyo. Tuloy-tuloy din ang pagsasagawa natin ng mga assistance to individuals in crisis situations, payout para sa burial, medical at financial assistance ayon sa assessment ng social workers. Ang inisyal na halagang ating naibigay ay umabot na sa 400,000 piso at patuloy din tayong nagbibigay ng mga psychosocial support services. Next slide. Okay. Narito rin po ang buod ng mga family food packs o FFP's augmentation natin galing sa main warehouse ng Pasay City at sa iba't ibang field offices na dinala sa mga apektadong rehiyon. Sa kabuong bilang, mahigit sa 100,000 family food packs na ang ating na-augment sa mga apektadong field offices. Samantala, ang DSWD ang nag-facilitate at namahagi ng mga natanggap nating donasyong food and non-food items mula sa ibang bansa. Lubos po tayo nagpapasalamat sa mga karating bansa sa Asia na sa pagpapaabot ng tulong katulad ng bigas, tubig, generator sets at iba pa. Mula naman sa mga local donors, nakatanggap din po tayo ng food and non-food items na na-transport na sa Surigao sa tulong ng Philippine Coast Guard noong Disyembre 23. Ang iba pang mga donasyon naman ay kasalukuyang nire-repack sa main warehouse ng DSWD sa Pasay City. Ang mga tulong at donasyon po ay hindi natin may paparating sa ating mga kabayan kung hindi dahil sa pag-agapay ng AFP at Philippine Coast Guard. Nais ko lang i-highlight ang tulong na binigay sa atin ng AFP at saka ng Philippine Coast Guard dahil kung wala sila, hindi natin kaagad mapaparating ang mga food and non-food items sa apektadong probinsya. Ganon din yung ating kapulisan kasi ang ating kapulisan bukod sa peace and order na binibigay nila sa ating mga food and non-food items, sila rin po ang nagbubuhat at nagkakarga pag-akyat ng family food pack sa mga air and naval assets at pagbaba nito sa kanilang mga destinasyon. Tayo ay agarang nakapagmobilisa ng mga air assets sa tulong ng Philippine Air Force na nagtransport ng food and non-food items na may bigat na mahigit sa 100 tonelada sa apektadong rehiyon. Ang Philippine Navy naman ay nagmobilisa rin ng kanilang assets na nagkarga na mahigit na 1,000 at 400 toneladang relief goods patungo sa apektadong rehiyon. Gumamit din ng iba't ibang assets ang Philippine Coast Guard upang tumulong sa pagtransport ng humigit sa 400 toneladang relief goods sa mga apektadong lugar. Sa ngayon ay mayroon pa tayong natitirang standby and stockpile funds na nagkakalaga ng mahigit 860 milyong piso. Kasalukuyan ay patuloy tayong namamahagi ng mga food and non-food items at financial assistance sa pamamagitan ng AIX, lalo na sa mga bayan na malubhang nasalanta ng Odette. For the information ng ating Pangulong Mayor Duterte, ongoing po ang payout natin sa Dapa, Siargao, at ang target po nating beneficiaries dito ay 14,000. Also, within this week, magpipayout din po tayo sa isang munisipalidad at isang syudad sa Negros Oriental. Meron din po tayong payout sa Bohol na more than 100,000 beneficiaries at 6 na priority areas sa Palawan, approximately 50,000 beneficiaries. Tayo ay nakikisa rin sa pagsasagawa ng post-disaster needs assessment katubang ang mga LGUs at Department of Public Works and Highways. At panghuli, tayo rin ay nagbibigay ng psychosocial first aid intervention sa mga individual at pamilyang apektado ng bagyong Odette kasama ng Department of Health. Dito po nagtatapos ang aking ulat ngayon at maraming salamat po.
Salamat, Secretary. Tawagin ko si... Sino ba mauna dito? Mauna to. Secretary Halad.
Good evening, Mr. President, to our cabinet secretaries and Senator Bongo and other officials. I will brief on the updates regarding the effects and damages and our disaster response in connection with Typhoon Odette. But this will be very brief, Mr. President, because I will be omitting those that were already discussed in detail by the earlier presenters. Next slide, please. So the total number of affected families, according to our latest situational report, is at 1,037,197 families. That is, or 4,049,438 individuals. This came from the 38 provinces and 11 regions affected by Typhoon Odette. And 9 provinces were hit the hardest. These are Dinagat Island and Surigao del Norte in Caraga, Southern Leyte and Leyte in Region 8, Bohol, Cebu, Negros Oriental in Region 7, Negros Occidental in Region 6, and Palawan in Mimaropa. As of the latest report also, Mr. President, we now have 389 dead, 64 missing, and 1,146 injured due to the onslaught of Typhoon Odette. Next slide, please. I'll be omitting this portion of the report, Mr. President, because these were already discussed in detail by the earlier presenters like Secretary Tugade, Secretary Cuse, Yusika Intik, and Secretary Mercado. Likewise, on the damages to houses, infra, and agriculture. Next slide. Next slide, please. In the response of the NDRMC, we are also talking about the different responses of the concerned departments and agencies, so I'll be omitting this report, Mr. President. Next slide. This is the summary of the logistics services that OCD coordinated. A total of 240,000 kilograms of assorted relief goods were flown utilizing transported utilizing air, sea, and land transportation assets of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, Philippine Coast Guard, other government, and private assets. These include 104,340 liters of bottled water and about 90,000 of relief items from the AHA Center of the ASEAN. Next slide, please. These are, back pa. No, forward. Okay, anyway, forward. These are the disaster management facilities that we activated. 7 government command and control centers or emergency operation centers activated. The main EOC is at the NDRRMC Operation Center in Camp Aguinaldo. This is hosting the response cluster or crisis management team meetings. And it is likewise replicated in the different regions affected. Mimaropa in Batangas City, Iloilo in Region 6, Mactan Air Base in Region 7, Tacloban City in Region 8, Cagayan de Oro in Region 10, and Butuan in Caraga City. We also activated 3 emergency logistics hubs. We are using as main logistic hubs the Delsa warehouse in inside Camp Aguinaldo, Quezon City. Since the stocks of this warehouse were already distributed, this is empty, so we are using it as drop-off points for donations and their staging points. We also established a logistics hub in Mactan Air Base and in Surigao City. In the event that more international assistance will be coming in, we are proposing to establish one-stop shop in these sites as the need arises. Mactan International Airport as our main one-stop shop, and NAIA in Pasay City and Davao City Airport. Next slide, please. We are monitoring these donations from domestic donors. We monitored donations from 43 government agencies and 79 private organizations. And these are the recipient localities: Bohol, Cebu, Leyte, Negros, Palawan, Surigao, and Siargao. And these are the items that we have received: mostly food, water, temporary shelter, shelter kits, construction materials, medicines, hygiene kits, learners and teachers kits, temporary learning spaces, generator sets, and fuels, and the others as shown. Next slide, please. For international assistance, we have monitored these offers. 16 countries are offering their assistance, 5 international organizations likewise. We have accepted the donation from Japan through JICA, and for reporting to DFA are the assistance from Israel, Taiwan, China, and the AHA Center. Next slide. Let me add also, Mr. President, that we have delivered a total of 104,340 liters of bottled water from Ormoc and Laguna plant of Nature Spring. And today we are transporting 1 million bottles to the Port of Manila. This will be loaded on a Navy ship and to be transported to Visayas. And tomorrow, one civilian cargo aircraft will be ferrying 30,000 bottles to Palawan. And ongoing also is the land transportation of 750,000 bottles from Ormoc to Southern Leyte and Leyte. We are also assisting in the provision of tarpaulins and sapulins. The sapulins can be used as temporary dividers for the temporary shelters of the affected families. And for our way ahead, Mr. President, we are now coordinating and planning for the conduct of post-disaster needs assessment, which will formulate the which will be the basis for the formulation of the rehabilitation and recovery program or plan of those areas affected. So that's all, Mr. President. Good evening.
Thank you, Yusek Khaled. Yan ang sinasabi ko. This is the time when the law should apply. The law on the proclamations of calamity should not be dependent on the assessment of the damage, because that exercise should come days after the catastrophic event. Na sinabi ko, kaya napilitan tayong not really disobey, but I told the COA, if I have to wait for that report, it would come about 1 week, 3 to 1 week. So the resulting, not really delay, but the period of assessment comes very much later. But anyway, yun yung tingin ko that that's the flow of the law sa ano. We would like to ask Ma'am Secretary Briones, how are you faring with the face-to-face schooling of the children?
We are proceeding with our plans to expand further the face-to-face implementation. Our pilot effort has been very successful. Sa lahat ng mga schools na inopen natin, public, private, international, as well as other types of school, wala ni isang COVID incident. Walang serious incident of ill effects on the children. So we believe that we can proceed. And we thank you for your permission given to the Department of Education and the Department of Health, as well as the DILG, to continue the assessment of schools which can be eligible for the expansion of face-to-face, Mr. President. But first of all, I would like to apologize for my non-physical presence because the results of my PCR tests did not arrive on time. I'd like to inform you, Mr. President, that I was in Region 7 before, during, immediately after, and I was also stranded for 3 days in Negros Oriental, along with other officials of Region 7 because of the problems which were already described. I will try to endeavor to make my assessment and report as brief as possible because the report on education, Mr. President, mirrors what has already been reported to you as happening in the other sectors of government, as well as the actions which have been undertaken. So I will focus on those which are relevant to education. Our first slide is that, of course, 11 regions were affected, 121 school division offices, 29,671 schools, and 12 million learners. I will not dwell long on the summary of hard-hit regions because the earlier reports already mentioned them, and our report also echoes to a great degree the extent of the damage of the typhoon. On the summary, please, can we continue with the slide, please? So I will not dwell long on that because you are already familiar, and you yourself, Mr. President, have seen the extent of the damage. These are specifically on the schools and our school facilities. Next slide, please. Immediately after the storm, I went down and visited, and there were still aftermaths. And I visited, for example, a school in Valencia Elementary School, which was run over by a huge tree and destroyed the roof. And it's also reflective of what is happening to the other government buildings. Next, please. This is in Puerto, Princesa, Palawan, which all of us know was badly and severely destroyed, damaged by the typhoon. This is in Region 4B. Schoolhouses whose roofs have flown off in the fury of the winds and the rain. Okay, next please. This is in Southern Leyte, Himbangan Elementary School. I have visited most of them, Mr. President. As I said before, even during the storm, I was going around in Negros Oriental because I am used to storms, whether of the physical, the psychological, and whatever variety. Next, please. This, Mr. President, dramatizes what you mentioned a while ago. what happened to a school in Siargao. You'll see the middle building is really is as if it went through a grinder. And just behind, you mentioned the coconut trees falling down. You mentioned banana trees, coconuts, and that is proof, this photo is proof positive of what happened in Siargao and in many of the school buildings. Thank you. Next, please. Even as I have always been on record as reluctant for the use of public schools as evacuation centers, without hesitation, on the request of the DILG, we agreed that our public schools can be used as temporary evacuation centers. So we have 656 public schools, 3,671 classrooms also used as evacuation centers. Next, please. In our estimates, because Mr. President, we want to recover, we want to build, but we have to ask how much will it cost to bring us back to what we were before, and perhaps beyond. And we have estimated that it will cost us 3.337 billion to reconstruct 1,086 totally damaged classrooms, which have counted, and rehabilitate 1,316 partially damaged classrooms. We will probably be looking at the 2022 budget as soon as it is passed, and we'll plead and beg for consideration, as we will be probably using a portion of the 2022 budget for rehabilitation. Next, please. So we also have a summary. We have been conducting a running total all the time because we knew the storm was coming. We know that every year storms come. So we have a running total of infrastructure damages, cost of repair and reconstruction, and those are the details, Mr. President. Thank you. Next, please. So we will need, back to the 73.43 million to replace the non-infrastructure damages and so on and so forth. We have tried to be as accurate as possible because this happens every year, ever since I was a child. And so, therefore, we know what to expect and what to anticipate. Next, please. From the Quick Response Fund, one of your earliest instructions, Mr. President, was to check on our quick response funds if there is any leftover. It's already the end of the year, Mr. President, and we have counted. We looked under the pillows, we checked the posts, we looked at our coconut shell banks and so on, and we counted 3.8 million, which is still with our office. And we also counted continuing funds which are available. This is 227 million, which can also be used. And these are savings from current funds and continuing funds, which have already been downloaded to the regional offices. We immediately did this because we know that all the speeches, all the tears in the world will not bring back those buildings, will not bring back our facilities without the necessary financial resources and the cooperation of everybody. Next, please. We also identified, Mr. President, 200 million more in funds with the Department of Education, which we will use to fund the printing of modules which are still necessary for our face-to-face or our blended learning approach. Only yesterday, Mr. President, you sent us instructions that we should also think of the communities. We think of the plight of our teachers, of our staff, and the children and their families. So we have been mobilizing. We have more than 200 partners from the public sector, the private sector, religious organizations, and we have been mobilizing them to contribute, to help out, since we cannot use public funds and for the purposes that was needed. So I encouraged and instructed the regional directors to start campaigns, and especially our own office in the central office, which is into partnerships. We have a group which does nothing but concentrate on partnerships with the private sector and with various groups. Mr. President, we encourage donations in kind and not necessarily in cash, so that we don't have to deal with the intricacies of financial accountabilities. So, Mr. President, these very briefly are the latest. To summarize, Mr. President, we will continue and we will endeavor to expand face-to-face classes. We survived 2 world wars, insurrections, revolutions, volcanic eruptions, floods, and all that, and schools continued to open. And this, Odette, will not stop us from continuing. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yung Odette na yan, hinahanap ko pa ang gaga, babae ang Odette. By the way, ma'am, si Sal Panelo, kasama natin sa cabinet, Secretary for Presidential Legal Advisor. He was in Zambales this afternoon, and he was maybe campaigning, but he was able to manage to have a crowd, and most of them were teachers. Sabi ng mga maestra kay Sal to convey to me na ang mga teachers raw wala nakalimutan ko. So sabi ko na tignan lang natin if there's any money. But you know, I'd like to inform you, ma'am, and the rest of the teachers all over the country that I have signed already the service recognition incentive and gratuity pay for the government teachers. So, in a few days, maybe ma-download na yan sa whatever is the mechanism for that. Pero ito yung matatanggap nila. Service recognition incentive and gratuity pay for the government of employees.
Thank you, Mr. President, for not forgetting the profession from which your mother spent and gave her life, professional life for. Only last September, Mr. President, you signed an order granting 910 million pesos for 1,000 award for each teacher during Global Teachers Day. And we have endeavored to add more steps so that in the ladder of professions of the teachers, so that they can move even without waiting for the next person to retire. They can move within ranks. Also, they have special hazard pay. We also increased the uniform allowance, and they can spend the uniform allowance as they please. If they like their old uniforms, they keep the money. If they don't like their old uniforms, they use the money to buy. And as I said, they have special hazard pay, and we have never failed on giving them the benefits that you have promised them on time. However, this has to be according to law, and you have done this several times, more than any other president, more than any other administration. The movement of the salaries of teachers has been faster than those of other professions. Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for that last 910 million, which you generously awarded the teachers, and now they are looking forward to what you also promised them. Thank you in their name. Thank you.
It's already signed ba? Napirmahan ko na to. So, for a few...
Salamat, Mr. President.
The document I signed was authorizing the grant of service recognition incentive to government employees for fiscal year 2021. So, maraming, I hope that ma-download ito kaagad at least before Christmas, New Year. Para bagong taon, meron silang hawak na pera. Yan ang pinahabol ko. Ma'am, my mother was a public school teacher. So, anak lang rin ako ng maestra. So, kaya medyo nauuna. You really deserve it. That is what government has formulated and prioritized. So, kung ano man yan, it's a delegated power by Congress to authorize the President to may pera na. So, good luck to the teachers. I hope I have contributed a little bit of happiness to them this Christmas.
More than a little bit, Your Excellency, Mr. President.
Thank you, ma'am. Now we go to yung hinahabol ko si General Madrigal. Sir. General Madrigal,
yes, sir,
can you hear me?
Mayong gabi po, mahal na Pangulo. Mayong gabi po sa ating mga miyembro ng kabinete. Sa ganang po ng Philippine Coconut Authority, katulad din po ng nabanggit na ni Secretary Dar, ito pong ating mga magnyonyog at ang industriya po ng nyog ay bali 25% po ng damaged agricultural crops natin ay ang ating nyugan. Pakatunayan po, about 10 million coconut trees po ang totally na damage sa atin. Ang karamihan po nito ay sa Region 13, nasa mga 5.7 million trees po. At sa Region 8, about 3.9 million trees. Meron din po tayo mga partially damaged pa. Maabot din po ng doon po sa mga nasabing rehiyon na tinamaan ay nasa mga 11 million trees. Although ito po mga partially damaged trees ay pwede pa rin po nating ma-rehabilitate. Now, ang ating pong ginawa, katulad po sa nabanggit din ng ibang ahensya, ano po tayo ng mga chainsaws, nasa mga 500 chainsaws po yung ating ipinapamahagi sa lalong-lalo na po sa Caraga at saka sa Region 8. At ito pong kasama po ang aming mga tauhan sa Philippine Coconut Authority na para masiguro rin po na yung pong mga qualified trees lamang ang ating maputol. At para po naman mas save natin yung iba pang mga puno na nakatayo na pwede pa natin mapakinabangan. At dito po yung po mga puno na mapuputol, pwede po magamit, sabi nga po ng ating mahal na Pangulo, ay pwede rin itong maitulong sa pagpapatayo ng mga temporary shelters. At katulong po ang ibang ahensya sa clearing operations na ginagawa natin. Now, sa tulong po na ating gagawin, maliban po dito, kami po ay naglaan, lalo-lalo na po sa darating na ating 2022 budget, yung pong ating mga tinamaan na mga puno, i-concentrate po natin yung ating coconut fertilization program, nasa mga 225 million po ito, dito po sa mga rehiyon na tinamaan ng Region 4B, Region 6, Region 7, Region 8, and Region 13. At ganoon din po, ito pong ating intercropping sa ating general appropriations po ay nasa mga 34.4 million na doon din po natin i-concentrate para po magkaroon ng pagkain ang ating mga magsasaka. Ito po yung mga short-term crops, short gestation crops, mga vegetables, at saka po mga ruminants na mga hayop na pwedeng mapakinabangan kaagad, hindi lamang ng ating mga magsasaka, kundi ng consuming public din. At ito pong, meron din po tayong yung pong incentivized planting natin, kahit po tinamaan yung mga o nasira, yung mga ibang mga pananim na inaalagaan ng ating mga magsasaka, ay patuloy natin bibigyan din ng incentive po itong ibibigay pa rin po sa kanilang incentive. At ito po kung sa ating pong Coconut Farmers and Industry Development Plan, ngayon po ay ready na rin po kaming may komite. Dumadaan lamang po sa vetting ng mga apat na ahensya, pabalik na rin sa pagkakasabi sa batas. Nakuha na po namin ang endorsement ng NEDA, ng DTI. Yun na lamang pong inaantay namin ay yung sa dalawang ahensya po, Department of Finance and yung pong Department of Budget and Management. At ito po ay nakahanda na pong maisumite sa ating mahal na Pangulo para maaprubahan at nang ma-roll out natin po natin ang matag ng iniintay na Coconut Farmers Trust Fund. At kung ito po ay magagawa sa unang taon po, dahil po sa batas ang sabi ay 5 billion, out of the 5 billion na initial allocation, ang nakalaan po doon sa mga na pwedeng magamit sa rehabilitation and social protection sa ating mga magsasaka, umaabot po na mga about 835 million ang nakalaan po doon sa mga rehiyon na nabanggit. Karamihan po dito, farm improvements, yung po mga native livestock na pwedeng ipamigay sa mga magsasaka. Meron din po tayong dairy program doon. Crop insurance, kadagdagan po sa binanggit na Secretary Dar na meron din po doon nakalaan ng mga about 117 million dito sa mga rehiyon na ito na ibibigay po ng Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation. At ang meron din po tayong of course yung sa ating hybridization, yung pong pag-replenish ng ating mga pananim. At ito po sa ngayon, ang ginagawa po namin yung iba pa rin mga available na mga planting materials natin ay itatransport po natin doon sa mga tinamaan lugar upang makapag-umpisa na po ng replanting ng mga natumbang mga puno. Yun lamang po, mahal na Pangulo, marami po salamat.
Salamat po, General Madrigal. Yung gusto kong marinig yung movement rin ng the Armed Forces of the Philippines. May call on the Chief of Staff.
Mr. President, Senator Go, Secretary Mijaldea, members of the Cabinet, good evening, sirs. Maayong gabi sa tanan. The updates of the AFP was included in the earlier presentation on the DND AFP HCDR operations. As reported earlier, sir, the AFP has deployed over 6,800 personnel in the different regions. Next slide, please. And these are also augmented by the deployment of our air assets from the Philippine Air Force. We have, next slide, we have actually deployed 27 of our aircrafts, including the 11 Black Hawks, which were very, very helpful in the rapid damage assessment and the relief operations that we executed from Cebu to the different islands. And most of these aircraft have been flying daily, and some have been performing 2 to 3 sorties every day just to maximize the transport of supplies. Next slide. These are the total number of goods transported. And we also facilitated, as reported earlier, the evacuation of stranded tourists from Siargao, numbering 324. Next slide. 15 of our naval assets were also deployed, including the biggest ship that we have, BRP Tarlac. This is LD-601, which is actually now back here in Manila after performing one sortie, bringing to Cebu a boatload of supplies and materials. Next slide. So we were able to transport over 1,400 tons through our naval assets. So this is the summary of the resources being deployed. This includes also 769 land assets. They are trucks, military trucks, transporting supplies from the different ports to the different destinations. Next. And the total number of stranded tourists and individuals evacuated, and the tonnage and volume of supplies being transported. Next. Aside from employing the personnel in the affected areas, we were also redeploying units from outside of the area. This includes a battalion-size marine unit, the Marine Amphibious Ready Unit from Manila, deployed to Cebu, helping Visayas Command in its relief operations. We also deployed engineer construction teams from the Philippine Army. We have the 51st Engineer Brigade based in Manila, sending teams to augment 53rd Engineer Brigade in Cebu. And also we have the 55th Engineer Brigade from Zamboanga and the 54th Engineer Brigade from Lanao del Sur, augmented to our engineer units in Cebu. We also deployed our teams from the Philippine Navy Construction Engineering Brigade and squadrons from the Air Force Engineering Wing. Joint Task Force Storm, these are the units from Katbalog and Samar, also sent out 34 carpentry teams to help in the reconstruction of damaged houses in Maasin and Limasawa Island. We also deployed our COMEL teams from Manila to help out in restoring signal capabilities of our units in Cebu and Bohol. We have been involved in the rapid damage assessment and needs analysis and the transport of relief goods. We also have the Civil Military Coordination Center. This one, sir, is a base here in Metro Manila. This is center is being used to accept donations from NGOs and from other agencies, and in coordination with the NDRIMC, we facilitate the transport and prioritization of the donations to the affected areas. And next slide. Next slide. We have also coordinated with the Philippine Navy affiliated reserve units. Some commercial boats have been used for the transport of other cargoes. We have Galdelos 2 and Santa Clara Shipping. These are Philippine Navy affiliated reserve units. Per the initiative of the Philippine Air Force, the Philippine Airlines also accommodated 5 tons of relief goods from Manila to Cebu. We have also deployed our mobile kitchen to Cebu, and we also help us facilitate the donation of the government of Israel to Siargao. And yes, yesterday and 2 days ago, we conducted Operation Christmas Drop by sending goods and supplies to our detachments in the West Philippine Sea. these detachments were also affected by the typhoon. So it gave much relief to our soldiers, believing that they are really being taken care of, even in being deployed in the remote areas. We also facilitated the arrival of a C-130 from Taiwan, carrying donated relief goods. And per instruction of the President, Sir, the BRPM Pangol is anchored in Siargao, and we added medical teams to augment the team here from Manila. These teams came from East Mincom and 4th Infantry Division to make the vessel a floating treatment facility. Next slide. Some of the pictures are shown. These were shown earlier, sir. Next. Next. Ito yung, please, this is the Navy boat 550, the second biggest Navy boat that we have, sir, carrying trucks. Some of the trucks are owned by Meralco and WSS, helping out in the restoration of power and water supply in Cebu. Next. Next. In closing, sir, even as the AFP is deploying forces and personnel in affected areas, we would like to assure the President that the AFP has sufficient forces and personnel securing the other regions of the country, sir. Thank you, sir.
Maraming salamat sa AFP. Nakita ko no umikot ako, and I am more than almost gratified by the response of the AFP. Again, para sa the rank and file, and of course to you, General Centino, maraming salamat po. Now, I go now to the Police General Carlos for the updates.
Magandang gabi po, Mr. President, Rodrigo Duterte, to Senator Bongo, Executive Secretary Attorney Villadea, Cabinet Secretaries, ladies and gentlemen, magandang gabi po. Ito ang ulat po namin ay yung naging bahagi po ng ating pambansang pulisya sa ating pong mga aksyon o tulong dahil sa nangyari pong pagsalanta ng Typhoon Odette. Nitong ang aming pong ulat ay as of December 27 sa araw pong ito. Just a short background po, noong December 14, kami po ay nag-activate po ng aming Subcommittee on Natural Disaster and National Disaster Operating Center pagpasok po nung Typhoon Odette nung December 14. At immediately po ay nag-send out po kami ng advisory sa lahat ng mga police regional offices na maaari pong tamaan ng Bagyong Odette. At sila po ay aming binigyan ng instruction na i-activate naman yung kanilang mga respective regional disaster incident management task group. So these are the actions prior to the arrival of Odette or maka-cause siya ng damage. So on the situation update po, makita po natin na we have identified 1,179 evacuation center kung saan po ay tumulong po ang ating mga kapulisan upang ito po ay masecure. At yung mayroon po tayong recorded po dito na yung ating po mga affected families and affected affected families of over 1 million at yung affected person is over 4 million. Meron po tayong natala na 99 flooded areas at mayroon hong 570,000 na displaced person at naulat na po earlier yung pong mga casualties nitong atin pong nangyari dito kay Odette. Next slide po. Sa part naman po ng Philippine National Police ay meron po kaming mga kasama na ang kanila pong mga kabahayan ay naapektuhan din po. So that's about 6,214 households distributed po from the different regions kung saan po dumaan po itong Odette. As shown on the screen po are some of the photos of the houses of our PNP personnel na damage din po. And also we also looked at the different facilities and buildings ng atin pong PNP at meron po tayong damages of 159 offices and buildings at ito po ay nagkakahalaga po ng over 164 million. Yun po yung damages na na-estimate po ng aming engineering service. Next slide po. Sa aming pong deployment, meron po tayong sa search, rescue, and retrieval ay nakapag-deploy po tayo ng 1,676 personnel at meron pa po kaming available 4,248 on standby. At yung aming pong RSSF, nakapag-deploy po kami ng 735 personnel at meron pa po kaming available na 6,145 personnel that can be deployed in case na kailangan pa hong mag-deploy ng ating mga police. At sa iba't ibang mga evacuation center, meron po tayong dineploy na 931 PNP personnel. Nagsagawa po tayo ng 254 rescue operation, 1,070 relief operation at meron po tayong na-rescue na 5,176. Makita po natin dito sa mga photos yung aming pong ginawang road clearing operations, yung pag-rescue, pag-secure po natin sa mga evacuation center at pagtulong po sa mga evacuation center at yung ating pong mga pulis ay atin din pong dineploy to secure yung mga vacated areas at yung pong pagpapanatili ng kaayusan sa mga lugar kung saan po nagkakaroon ng pag-ipon-ipon katulad po ng mga gas station o water refilling station na nakita po natin na dito po pumupunta yung ating pong mga kababayan upang sila'y makakuha po ng supply. Next slide po. At ito naman po yung aming deployment ng aming pong mga mobility asset. Ang aming pong water assets ay meron po kaming 43 na patuloy hong nagsisilbi upang magamit ng ating pong mga kapulisan upang maihatid yung mga tulong at yung ating pong mga personnel ay ma-deploy. At nag-redeploy po kami, yung aming pong high-speed tactical craft ay na-deploy po namin sa Region 13 mula po sa Central Visayas at yung isa naman po ay nasa Dumaguete at yung isa pong rubber boat naman po ay nasa Bohol. Meron din po kami isang high-speed tactical craft na galing po sa Region 10 at na-deploy naman po makatulong po sa Region 13 sa Caraga. Next slide. Sa ating pong air assets, yung aming pong dalawang helicopter ay kasalukuyan pong nasa Tacloban at araw-araw po itong ginagamit upang maghatid ng tulong sa Southern Leyte. At yung tatlo naman po ay nandito pa ho sa PNP hangar dito sa GenAb dito sa NAIA at yung apat naman po ay ongoing po yung kanilang periodic maintenance. So sa mobility asset, kami po ay nag-deploy po ng amin pong search and rescue vehicle na meron pong desalination machine. Ito po ay umalis po ng Bikutan at nakarating po kahapon. Nasa Southern Leyte na po ito kahapon. Meron din pong tumawid na po papuntang Surigao at yung isa naman po ay naglakbay papuntang Ormoc upang makatawid naman po papunta sa Cebu. So ito po ay gagamitin natin para makapagbigay po ng additional na supply na tubig galing po sa yung salt water or river water na maaari na bong itong maging potable o mainom na tubig. So the other mobility assets, nakadeploy po ito, 1,579 trucks, patrol cars, at ito po ay kahit yung amin pong nandun po sa aming area police commands ay nagagamit na po namin yung amin pong mga man trucks para makapaghatid ng tulong sa mga lugar na apektado po ni Typhoon Odette. Ito po ay yung aming pong mga SAR equipment and communication equipment. Meron po kaming 65 generator sets na nasa on-site in different areas. 38 additional, meron pa po kaming mga maaari pa hong ma-deploy. Ang aming pong satellite phones ay meron po na nasa 5 na nasa Region 6, 3 sa Region 8, total of 8, at meron po kaming available na 2 na nandun naman po sa Area Police Command for Visayas and Eastern Mindanao. So nag-deploy din po kami ng chainsaw sa aming pong ginagawang pagtulong sa road clearing sa DPWH, at patuloy po itong nagagamit sa ating pong road clearing operation. Sa hanay po ng Philippine National Police ay meron po kaming tulong na nakalap. Voluntaryo po ang ating pong mga pulis ay nag-ipon ng kanila pong mga maaring itulong sa aming mga kapatid na pulis na naapektuhan. And we were able to generate 16 million pesos and an additional 11 million worth of goods. Ito po ay as early as December 18 ay nag-conceptualize po kami ng Police Big Brother concept, kung saan immediately po ang Police Regional Office 5 ay sila po ang naging Big Brother ng Region 8 sa Southern Leyte on December 18. Bumaba na po sila kaagad at naghatid po ng tulong. At yung pong mga regional offices na sa Mindanao ay Region 11 and 12 are supposed to help Caraga. However, sabi ng Region 10, hindi na ho nila kailangan po ng tulong. Inabot na rin po ng Region 9, Region 10 at BAR ang tulong ng ating pulis doon naman po sa mga kababayan natin sa Region 13. So nung sinilip po namin ang Panay Island at Negros Island noong December 18, ay ang ating pong Police Regional Office 4A ang siya naman pong tumulong sa Western Visayas. At ang atin pong mga Police Regional Office sa Luzon, Region 1, Region 2, Region 3, Cordillera and NCR, ifinokus po namin for Region 7. Doon po namin binigay yung mga tulong na yan. At dahil naging state of calamity po ang Palawan, ang buong Region 4B, iswinning po namin ang tulong ng Region 1 to Palawan. So nagkaroon po kami ng Big Brother concept, at yung mismo po ng pulis natin na po ang siyang magbibigay ng tulong sa amin pong pulis na naging biktima para po maayos ang kanilang bahay at maibigyan po ng tulong kaagad at mabigyan din po ng tulong yung ating mga kababayan. And after po nung pagpupulong sa Cebu noong December 23, nung tayo po pinatawag ng Presidente, nag-usap po kami ni Chief of Staff, and he stated that he will do a Christmas drop. So ang ginawa lang po namin, nag-conduct din po kami ng simultaneous Christmas drop, Operation Christmas Drop, and bringing the spirit of Christmas doon po sa mga kabataan sa mga affected areas. Sinabay po namin ang pagbibigay po ng tulong, ngunit may dala po kami mga candy, mga laruan para po doon sa mga kabataan. At in all the affected areas, ginawa po namin to simultaneous. At yung hindi naman po affected ay naggawa din po sila ng Operation Christmas Drop to reach out to depressed areas. So two-way, nakakaatid na po kami ng tulong, ay napapasaya po namin. And I would like to thank the concept of given by Chief of Staff AFP. Twinik lang po namin ng konti, at the same with the Armed Forces, itutuloy po namin ito hanggang December 31. So moving forward, patuloy po yung aming tulong sa search, rescue, relief and retrieval operation kung kakailanganin, at yung aming pong pagpo-provide ng security sa mga evacuation center at sa mga community at yung iba pa pong request. Yung aming pong available communication equipment, ang aming pong COMEL ay bumaba na rin po para matulungan yung aming mga opisina, at yung aming pong pagbibigay din po ng tulong o security to other government agencies para po maibalik yung serbisyo o yung rehabilitation po sa mga iba't ibang bahagi ng naapektuhang lugar. Yung aming pong RSSF are to be deployed para po mapalitan na po yung napagod na po nating mga pulis, sila po yung makapagpahinga. So the new fresh policemen from the unaffected region will proceed to the affected regions to help out para makapahinga ng isang linggo, then rotate naman po namin uli. So tuloy-tuloy din po yung aming pong pag-deliver ng mga relief goods, mga generator sets na nanggagaling po sa aming po mga partners and community partners at saka advocacy group. Just today, we received an additional generator set, food items, and other health and hygiene kits na binigay naman po ni Undersecretary De Bolsinas, at yun naman po ay dedicated for Tabang Cebu. Nandun na po si Undersecretary De Bol sa Cebu, tatanggapin niya na po yun at ibibigay po namin sa amin pong mga kababayan sa Cebu. So that's the report po ng ating pong pambansang pulisya. Maraming salamat sa pagkakataon na nagiging bahagi po kami sa pagtulong sa ating pong mga kababayan. Magandang gabi po.
Thank you. Salamat po, General. I hate to tell you this, but I have to cut our program tonight. Ay kukunti lang naman. You will have your chance. When is the next Talk to the People? Next week. So you'll have a chance to, if there's anything that you will report or can report or will report, we can have it next Friday. This coming Friday. So, maraming salamat sa inyo. By the way, Sir, si General Carlos, there's a spike of hold-ups na riding on tandem.
Yes, sir.
Somebody reported to me. So, kindly look into this problem.
Wilco, sir. Wilco. We'll do it.
Thank you. Pasko magtatrabaho ako. Hindi ako mag-New Year. Talagang lalabas ako. Ganun, sabi ko mag-overtime kami, ang gobyerno, hindi magsara para baski na Pasko. Sabi ko magsakripisyo na muna tayo. Total, marami ng Pasko sa buhay natin. Sobra-sobra na itong Pasko na ito, ibigay natin sa tao. hindi ko kayo makakalimutan at hindi ko kayo mapabayaan. Maraming salamat po.